Ethan was a pilot, stranded on an unknown planet after a crash. His ship had been damaged beyond repair, and he had no choice but to survive on the hostile world. He had no idea where he was, just that it was far from any place he knew. The sky above him was a strange shade of purple, and the ground seemed to shimmer in the light of a distant sun. Days passed with no sign of help. Ethan had managed to find food and fresh water, though it wasn't easy. The planet was covered in dense forests, and strange creatures roamed the land. But none of that scared him. He was a survivor, and as long as he had breath in his lungs, he wouldn't give up. One afternoon, while exploring the forest, Ethan heard a soft sound. It was almost like a child crying. Curious, he followed the noise through the trees, his heart beating faster with each step. The sound grew louder, and soon he came across a small clearing. There, lying on the ground, was a little alien child. She was no bigger than a human girl of 6 or 7, with large eyes that shone like stars. Her skin was a pale blue, and her long silvery hair flowed around her like a mist. She looked fragile, her small body trembling as she sobbed softly. Ethan's heart melted when he saw her. Despite being far from his home, he couldn't ignore someone in need. He kneeled beside her, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "Hey, it's okay," he said softly, unsure if she could understand him. "I'll help you." The girl looked up at him with wide, tear-filled eyes. She didn't speak, but she didn't pull away either. Ethan smiled reassuringly, then glanced around to see if anyone else was nearby. The forest was silent except for the faint hum of the planet's wind. No one seemed to be chasing her. Ethan carefully helped the child to her feet, noticing that she was barefoot and dressed in what looked like torn clothing. He could tell she was injured. There were cuts on her arms and legs, and she looked exhausted. Without thinking twice, he scooped her into his arms, holding her close as he walked back toward his camp. As they made their way through the trees, Ethan kept his eyes open for any signs of danger, but he didn't see anything threatening. It was strange how peaceful the planet seemed, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to this situation than just a simple rescue. When they reached his camp, Ethan laid the girl down on the makeshift bed he'd set up. He rummaged through his supplies, pulling out some medical equipment and water. The child stared at him silently as he cleaned her wounds, her gaze intense yet distant. "I don't know who you are or where you came from," Ethan said, speaking more to himself than to her. "But you're safe now. I'll take care of you until we figure this out." The girl didn't respond, but her soft eyes seemed to thank him in their own way. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Ethan couldn't help but wonder who this child was and why she was alone on this strange world. The next morning, Ethan woke up to a strange silence. The usual sounds of the forest, the rustling of leaves, the distant calls of creatures, were missing. He sat up quickly, feeling uneasy. His eyes scanned the camp, and his heart skipped a beat when he noticed that the little alien girl, Lyra, was gone. Panic rushed through Ethan. He had only fallen asleep for a few hours, and she had been sleeping beside him. He quickly stood up, calling out her name. "Lyra, where are you?" There was no answer. Ethan grabbed his rifle, the only weapon he had, and rushed out of the camp, looking for any signs of her. His footsteps echoed in the quiet forest as he pushed through the dense trees. His mind raced. Had someone taken her? Had she wandered off on her own? The thought of leaving her unprotected filled him with dread. As he walked deeper into the forest, the air felt heavier, almost as if the trees themselves were watching him. He wasn't sure if it was his nerves or if something about this place was truly unnatural. The planet had been strange from the start, but this sudden disappearance was making him question everything. He searched for hours, moving through the woods with no luck. Then, just as the sun was beginning to set, he found something odd. A strange glowing mark was burned into the ground, where Lyra had been the night before. It wasn't like anything he had ever seen. It was a soft, golden glow that pulsed faintly, as if it was alive. Ethan crouched down to get a closer look, his fingers brushing the ground. The air around the mark hummed with energy, and his skin tingled. He jumped back, heart racing. This wasn't just an ordinary mark. Something had happened here. Ethan looked around, but there were no other signs of Lyra. No footprints, no broken branches, just the strange, glowing mark. He wondered if it was some kind of alien symbol. But before he could think any further, he heard something in the distance. The sound of ships, large ships. He turned quickly and looked up. There, high in the sky, were three dark shapes descending rapidly toward the planet's surface. His first thought was that they were military vessels. Then, his gut told him they weren't just any ships. They were searching for something or someone. And they were likely after Lyra. Ethan took off running, making his way back to the camp. His mind raced. Who were these people? What did they want with the girl? And how had they found her so quickly? He reached his camp, heart pounding in his chest. He had to move quickly. There was no time to waste. He grabbed what little he could from his supplies, preparing for whatever came next. He would find Lyra, no matter what it took. But as he stood there, staring at the empty space where she had been, one question haunted him more than all the others. Who was Lyra, really? Ethan didn't waste any time. He knew that whoever was chasing Lyra would stop at nothing to find her. He spent the next few hours running through the forest, searching for any sign of her. His mind was spinning. Why would anyone want to hurt a child? And why did it feel like he was being watched? Just as the sun began to rise, casting long shadows across the forest floor, Ethan stumbled upon something. It was a small, hidden entrance to an underground structure, partially covered by thick vines and moss. His heart raced. Could this be where Lyra had gone? Could this be the place she was trying to escape from? He moved closer, carefully pushing aside the vines to reveal a metal door. It looked old, but the strange symbols carved into its surface told him this wasn't from any human civilization. Hesitant, but with no other options, Ethan gently pushed the door open. Inside, the air was cold and smelled of dust. The walls were lined with glowing panels and alien technology that made his skin crawl. He moved deeper into the structure, trying to stay as quiet as possible. Every step he took echoed through the narrow hallways. Suddenly, he heard voices, soft whispers. He pressed himself against the wall and peered around a corner. There, in a large chamber, were several aliens, all gathered around a glowing table. They were speaking in a language Ethan couldn't understand, but their body language was enough to tell him they were worried. And when they noticed the mark on the ground he had found earlier, their eyes widened in fear. One of them, taller and more imposing than the others, stepped forward. His voice was sharp and commanding, though Ethan could only make out a few words. From what he could gather, they were looking for someone. And that someone was Lyra. Ethan's heart sank. So she wasn't just a lost child. The pieces of the puzzle were finally starting to come together. He backed away, careful not to make a sound. As he turned to leave the underground base, he heard a low hum. The walls seemed to pulse with energy, and for a moment, it felt like the very ground beneath him was alive. Once outside, Ethan took a deep breath. He needed to find Lyra, and fast. But he had so many questions now. Who were these aliens? Why were they looking for her? And what did they want with a child? As he made his way back to his camp, he could feel a shift in the air. The forest was eerily quiet, and the sky above seemed darker than before. He had a feeling that whatever he was about to uncover would change everything he thought he knew. When he returned to his camp, he found Lyra sitting on the ground, staring at the glowing mark on the earth. Her expression was unreadable, but when she looked up at him, there was a sadness in her eyes. "It's them, isn't it?" Ethan asked softly, his voice shaking with fear. "They're after you." Lyra nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "They are not just after me. They want what I carry inside." Ethan frowned. "What do you mean?" Lyra closed her eyes, as if gathering strength. "I am not just any child, Ethan. I am a princess. Ethan stood there, frozen, his mind struggling to process what Lyra had just said. A princess. It didn't make sense. The little alien girl he had been helping, fragile, lost, and frightened, was a princess. But as he looked into her eyes, he saw something more. There was a strength in her gaze, a quiet confidence that hadn't been there before. Lyra's words hung in the air. I am not just any child. I am the princess of the Aravel kingdom, the last of my bloodline. Ethan could only stare at her. His brain was working overtime to catch up. He had found her in the forest, alone and injured, with no idea of who she really was. He had thought she was just a lost child. But now, it seemed like she was more important than he could have ever imagined. How is that possible? Ethan finally asked, his voice low and full of disbelief. You're just a child. You don't look like a princess. Lyra sighed, her small shoulders slumping. I was never meant to be on this planet. My people, my family, are at war with the Galvorn Empire, a powerful group that wants to take over my world. When I was born, they saw me as a threat to their rule. They tried to kill me, but I escaped. My parents, my kingdom, they're all in danger because of me. Ethan's heart ached as he listened to her. The weight of her words settled over him like a heavy cloak. A princess. He had no idea how much danger she was in or how much responsibility rested on her small shoulders. She wasn't just a child. She was the key to her people's future. I don't understand, Ethan said, trying to make sense of everything. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Why didn't you say anything? Lyra looked away, her voice barely a whisper. I couldn't. If anyone knew who I really was, they would come after me. The Galvorn Empire has spies everywhere. They'd been searching for me for years. I had to hide. I had to stay hidden. You were the only one who treated me like a regular person, like I wasn't some royal burden. Ethan's chest tightened as he watched her. This wasn't just a lost child. This was a princess in exile, someone who had been forced to live in hiding to protect herself and those around her. Then we have to get you home, Ethan said, his voice filled with determination. We can't just let them find you. I won't let that happen. Lyra shook her head, her silvery hair falling over her shoulders. It's not that simple. My kingdom is far away. The Galvorn Empire controls most of the space around my world. They've taken over trade routes and blockaded all entry points. No one can get in or out. My family, they need me, but they won't be able to reach me without help. Ethan thought for a moment. He had no idea how he could help a princess, especially when an entire empire was after her. But something inside him told him he couldn't just leave her here. He couldn't let her face this alone. I'll help you, Ethan said, his voice steady. We'll find a way. We'll get you home. Lyra's eyes softened as she looked at him. For the first time since they had met, she smiled. A small, thankful smile. Thank you, Ethan. You don't know what this means to me. Ethan knew they didn't have much time. Lyra, the young princess, was in more danger than he could have ever imagined. The Galvorn Empire, a ruthless force that controlled much of space, was searching for her, and they wouldn't stop until they had her. After their conversation, Ethan wasted no time preparing. He packed his gear, checked his broken ship, and gathered everything he thought they might need. Lyra watched quietly, her mind clearly elsewhere. She was deep in thought, no doubt considering the dangers they would soon face. We have to move fast, Ethan said, his voice firm. The Galvorn Empire won't take long to find us. We need to get off this planet before they send more ships. Lyra nodded, her eyes still somber. I know, but even if we get off this planet, there's no way to avoid them. They control every space route near my kingdom. We'll have to find another way. Ethan took a deep breath, trying to think of something, anything, that could help. His ship was damaged, but it wasn't beyond repair. He had managed to make a few quick fixes to get it working, but it wasn't in perfect condition. He would have to push it to its limits if they were going to escape. We don't have a choice, Ethan said, determination in his eyes. We'll find a way. Lyra glanced at him, her eyes filled with gratitude. I trust you, Ethan. I don't know what I would do without you. Ethan's heart softened. He hadn't planned on getting involved in anything like this, but now that he was, he couldn't turn back. He owed it to Lyra, to the girl he had rescued, to do everything he could to help her. As they made their way toward the ship, Ethan felt a strange sense of urgency. Something told him that danger was closer than he realized. His instincts were right, just as they reached the edge of the forest. The sky above them darkened. A large ship appeared overhead, casting a long shadow on the ground. It's them, Lyra whispered, her voice tense. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. The ship was massive, too massive to be just a patrol vessel. This was something much bigger. He didn't hesitate. He grabbed Lyra's hand and pulled her into a sprint toward the ship. Get to the ship. Now, Ethan shouted. Lyra ran beside him, her feet light and fast. As they reached the ship, Ethan quickly worked to power it up. His fingers flew across the controls, but there was no time to waste. The enemy ship was descending fast, and he knew they wouldn't have much time to get off the ground. The ship's engine sputtered to life, and Ethan could feel the vibrations under his feet. It was working, but barely. He hoped it would be enough. We're almost there, Ethan said, his voice tight with anxiety. Lyra looked out the ship's window, her face pale as the enemy ship hovered closer. She reached out and gripped Ethan's arm tightly. Hurry, they're closing in. With one final push, Ethan slammed the throttle forward. The ship lurched into the air, just as the enemy ship fired a warning shot. Ethan steered the ship sharply, narrowly avoiding the blast. The force of the turn made Lyra stumble, but she quickly regained her balance. They were free, at least for now. But Ethan knew this was just the beginning. The real danger was still ahead, and they had no idea what the Galvorn Empire would do to capture the princess. But one thing was certain. Ethan would protect her, no matter what. Ethan's hands shook slightly as he steered the damaged ship through the stars. They were free from the immediate danger of the Galvorn Empire, but the journey ahead would not be easy. The ship was flying, but it wasn't in the best condition. Ethan could hear the creaks of the hull and the occasional sputter from the engines. We need to get somewhere safe, Ethan said, his voice focused but tense. We can't keep running forever. Lyra, sitting beside him, stared out of the window into the endless blackness of space. She had grown quieter since they left the planet. Ethan could tell that she was deep in thought. Her homeworld was still a long way off, and with the Empire in pursuit, they had little chance of getting there without help. I know a place, Lyra finally said, her voice soft but filled with determination. It's a hidden base. It's far from here, and it's safe for now. I can contact some old allies. They'll help us. Ethan glanced at her, surprised. Allies? Who are they? Lyra turned to face him, her eyes serious. They are my father's former allies. They helped protect my kingdom before the Empire grew too powerful. They've been hiding ever since, but they owe my family. They'll want to help. Ethan nodded, unsure of what to expect. He had no idea how these allies would react to a human being involved, but he trusted Lyra. He had to. All right, Ethan said. Let's get to this base. It's our best shot. For the next few hours, they traveled in silence, the hum of the ship's engines the only sound in the cockpit. As the stars passed by, Ethan couldn't help but think about how much his life had changed in such a short time. One moment, he was a pilot stranded on an unknown planet. The next, he was caught in the middle of an intergalactic war, helping an alien princess escape from an empire that wanted her dead. Lyra's voice broke through his thoughts. We're almost there. I can feel their presence. They'll know we're coming. Ethan's grip tightened on the controls. What do we do if they don't want to help us? What if they're gone? Lyra turned to him with a small, reassuring smile. They won't turn us away. They'll help us. They have no choice. The ship flew deeper into space, and soon a small, hidden moon came into view. It was covered in thick clouds and surrounded by asteroids, making it nearly impossible to spot from afar. Lyra's hand moved to a hidden panel on the ship's dashboard and began to enter a series of codes. "I'm sending the signal," she said. "They'll respond soon." Minutes passed, and just as the tension began to build, a flicker of light appeared on the communication screen. A voice came through, distorted but clear enough to hear. "Lyra, is that really you?" Lyra's face lit up with relief. "Yes, it's me. I'm with a friend. We need your help. The Galvorn Empire is after us." There was a pause on the other end, and then the voice responded. "We've been expecting you. Come to the base. We'll be ready." Ethan breathed a sigh of relief. They had found help, but this was just the beginning. They still had to figure out how to defeat the Empire and return Lyra to her kingdom. As they entered the moon's atmosphere, Ethan glanced at Lyra. He could see the weight of the world in her eyes, but there was also a glimmer of hope. She wasn't alone anymore. Together, they had a chance. The hidden base on the moon was a surprise. It was not what Ethan had expected. The facility was small but well-equipped, with high-tech communication systems and advanced machinery. It was clear that Lyra's allies were skilled and resourceful. Yet, despite the advanced technology, the base had the feeling of a place built in secret, away from the prying eyes of the Empire. As Ethan and Lyra entered the base, they were greeted by a group of aliens. They looked much like Lyra, but their eyes were hardened, and their bodies showed signs of years of battle. These were warriors, survivors from the old days of the Aravel Kingdom, when they had fought alongside her family. The leader of the group, a tall, silver-skinned alien with a scar across his face, stepped forward. "Lyra," he said, his voice rough but warm. "It's good to see you. We've been waiting for you." Lyra smiled, her face lighting up with relief. "I didn't think I'd make it this far, but I need your help. The Galvorn Empire is hunting me. They won't stop until they find me." The leader, named Talon, nodded solemnly. "We know. We've been watching them. The Empire is stronger than ever, but we'll do what we can. You're safe here, for now." Ethan stood to the side, listening closely. He didn't understand all the details, but he could sense the history and the loyalty these people had for Lyra. He was beginning to feel like he was in the presence of something much bigger than himself. "We've set up a plan," Talon continued. "There's a way we can get you to your homeworld, but it won't be easy. The Empire controls the space around your planet, and getting through their blockade will take every bit of strength we have." Ethan looked at Lyra, his eyes filled with concern. "How will we get past them? They'll be watching every ship that comes close." Lyra's face grew serious. "I have a plan too. We can use an old escape route, one that's been forgotten. But it's dangerous. It's a narrow path through space, one that only a few people know about. And even if we get through, we'll be risking everything." Talon's eyes narrowed. "We don't have much choice. The Empire won't wait forever." Just as the group was preparing to discuss the details of their plan, something strange happened. One of the group members, a young alien named Ven, approached Ethan with an uneasy look. Ven had been quiet ever since they arrived, and now his behavior seemed off. "I need to talk to you," Ven whispered urgently. Ethan followed him to a corner of the base, away from the others. "What's going on?" he asked. Ven's eyes darted nervously. "I don't know who to trust anymore. There's something wrong with this group. Talon, the leader, he's been talking to the Empire." Ethan's heart sank. "What do you mean? Are you sure?" "I overheard him," Ven said, his voice trembling. "He's been secretly working with the Empire. He promised them that he would hand over Lyra in exchange for his safety." Ethan couldn't believe it. The very people they were trusting had been betraying them all along. "Are you sure? How can you be certain?" Ven nodded, his face pale. "I've seen the messages," He's been meeting with Empire agents. We can't trust him. We have to warn Lyra. Ethan felt his stomach twist. They were in even more danger than he had thought. The plan to escape wasn't just about evading the Empire. Now they had to worry about betrayal from within their own ranks. Without hesitation, Ethan turned and rushed back to Lyra, his mind racing. He had to tell her the truth. They couldn't afford to be caught off guard. The base was in chaos. Ethan's heart raced as he grabbed Lyra's arm and pulled her out of the room. He couldn't waste any more time. Ven had been right. Talon, the leader of Lyra's allies, had been secretly working with the Empire. If they didn't leave now, they might all be caught. We have to go, Ethan said urgently. We can't trust anyone here. Lyra's eyes widened in shock. Talon, I can't believe it. I thought we were safe here. There's no time for that now. We need to get to the ship before Talon or anyone else knows we're gone. They ran through the narrow corridors of the base, making their way to the hangar where the ship was stored. Ethan's thoughts raced. They had no allies left here. They had to get off this base and figure out their next move. The danger was real, and it was closing in fast. As they reached the hangar, Ethan quickly began to check the ship's systems. It was still in rough shape, but it was the only way out. He heard Lyra's soft footsteps behind him, and he turned to see her staring at him, her face filled with fear. Where do we go now? Lyra asked, her voice trembling. The Empire is everywhere. They'll be hunting us down. I don't know how much longer we can keep running. Ethan placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. We'll find a way. We always do. For now, we need to leave here. There's a place I know. It's a deserted planet, far from here. It's uncharted. It won't be easy, but it's the best chance we've got. Lyra nodded slowly. Okay, let's go. Ethan quickly powered up the ship, the engines humming to life. They were ready to leave the hangar and get as far from the traders as possible. Just as they were about to launch, a warning signal flashed on the console. Ethan's eyes widened. We're not alone. Outside the hangar, another ship appeared, its dark silhouette blocking the stars. It was the Empire. They had found them. Hold on, Ethan shouted. He slammed the throttle forward, and the ship lurched into the air, racing toward the planet's atmosphere. The enemy ship followed, its weapons flashing as it fired a warning shot. Ethan steered the ship sharply, narrowly avoiding the blast. The ship's engines screamed as they pushed the ship to its limit. Lyra held onto the seat, her face pale with fear. They were being chased, and they couldn't outrun them forever. Where's the planet? Lyra asked, her voice shaking. It's just ahead, Ethan said, his eyes focused on the controls. We have to make it there, or we're done for. The ship jerked again as another blast grazed the hull. Ethan's heart raced, but he pushed forward. He wasn't going to let the Empire catch them. They had come too far to fail now. As the planet came into view, Ethan made a risky move. He sharply turned the ship, heading toward the atmosphere at full speed. The ship shook violently as they entered the planet's atmosphere, but Ethan gritted his teeth and held on. The enemy ship was still following them, but they couldn't keep up with the sharp turns and evasions. With a final burst of speed, Ethan dove the ship toward the surface of the deserted planet, hoping to lose their pursuers in the thick clouds and rough terrain below. The ship plummeted downward, and for a moment, everything went dark. Ethan's hands gripped the controls tightly as the ship finally landed with a heavy thud on the surface of the deserted planet. The ship's engines sputtered and then went silent, leaving an eerie stillness in the air. Outside, the dense clouds and rocky landscape of the uncharted planet stretched as far as the eye could see. Lyra's voice broke the silence. We're safe, for now. Ethan nodded, his chest still tight with adrenaline. He quickly powered down the ship and unbuckled his seatbelt. We need to move fast. The Empire will come after us. We can't stay here long. Lyra stood up and looked out the ship's window, her eyes scanning the planet's rugged surface. "We should hide the ship," she said, her voice steady. "We can't risk leaving any trace of where we are." Ethan agreed. They had barely escaped the Empire's pursuit, but now they were alone on a planet that no one knew. Their ship could be their only way out if they were to make it to her kingdom. He nodded and followed Lyra outside. The air was cold, and the ground beneath their boots felt uneven and rocky. They walked away from the ship, putting distance between it and any potential Empire searchers. The clouds above blocked most of the sunlight, casting an oppressive shadow over the barren landscape. "This place feels empty," Ethan said, looking around at the desolate surroundings. "It is," Lyra replied. "This planet was once a place of life, but after the war with the Empire, it became forgotten. No one comes here anymore." They walked for what felt like hours, moving toward a high ridge where Lyra believed they could hide for a while. As they reached the top, they paused to catch their breath. From there, they could see the ship, now hidden in a small valley below, but they also saw something else, a flicker in the distance. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. "There's something out there." Lyra's eyes narrowed. "It's them. The Empire has found us." Ethan looked at Lyra in disbelief. "How did they?" "I don't know. But they're here, and we don't have much time." The sound of ships growing louder filled the air. Ethan and Lyra quickly scrambled to find cover behind large rocks, hiding from view. The Empire's fleet was closing in, their ships casting long shadows over the planet's surface. Ethan's mind raced. He knew they couldn't outrun the Empire again. This was it, the final stand. Lyra stood up, her face hard with determination. "We have one chance. I can call on the allies who are still loyal to my family. They will come to help, but we have to fight to buy time." Ethan stared at her, feeling the surge of respect. She was ready to fight, even after everything she'd been through. "We're not alone, then." "No," Lyra said, her voice steady. "Not anymore. But we need to hold off the Empire long enough for them to arrive." They both knew this wouldn't be easy. The Empire was ruthless, and their forces were strong. But Lyra's resolve gave Ethan a sense of hope, even in the face of overwhelming odds. The ships hovered overhead, their weapons charging. Ethan took a deep breath, preparing for the battle ahead. He had no idea how this would end, but one thing was certain. He wasn't going to let Lyra fight alone. Not now. As the first blast from the enemy ships tore through the air, Ethan and Lyra dove into action, ready to face whatever the Empire threw at them. The battle raged around them. Ethan and Lyra fought side by side, taking cover behind rocks as the Empire's ships circled above, firing their weapons. The air was thick with smoke and the sound of explosions. Every second felt like an eternity, but through it all, Lyra remained focused, her eyes sharp with determination. Ethan couldn't believe how quickly she had transformed. The frightened child he had found in the forest was now a warrior, a princess leading the charge against the very people who had hunted her. She had a strength that he hadn't expected, and it gave him the courage to keep fighting. "We can't hold them off much longer," Ethan said, his voice strained. "The ships are too strong." Lyra glanced at him, her face set in a hard line. "We just have to hold on a little longer. My people will be here soon." Just as the Empire's forces seemed to close in, a loud, powerful sound filled the air. The ground shook beneath them, and suddenly, the Empire's ships faltered. Ethan looked up, his eyes widening in surprise. "Who's that?" he asked, barely able to believe what he was seeing. A massive ship appeared from the clouds above, its hull marked with the insignia of the Aravel Kingdom. It was an ancient warship, one that had been lost to history, now returned with a vengeance. The ship's weapons fired in a precise, calculated rhythm, taking down the Empire's ships one by one. Lyra's face softened with relief, and she gave a small, victorious smile. "They're here." The battle turned in their favor. The Empire's ships began to retreat, unable to withstand the combined force of the Aravel allies. It wasn't long before the last of the enemy forces were gone, and silence fell over the planet. Ethan looked at Lyra, his heart pounding in his chest. You did it. You're going to make it back to your people. Lyra's eyes were filled with gratitude, but there was also a sadness in them. It's not over yet. We still have a lot of work to do. The Empire's hold on my kingdom is strong, but this is just the beginning. Ethan nodded. He knew she was right. They had won this battle, but the war was far from over. There was still so much to rebuild, so much to fight for. As they stood together, watching the Aravel warship land nearby, a group of Lyra's people emerged, led by Talon. He looked at Lyra with respect, though there was still an air of tension between them. He hadn't been the one to betray them, but he had his own secrets. Still, in this moment, they had all united for the same cause. Lyra turned to Ethan, her expression serious but full of gratitude. You've done more than anyone could have asked. You've helped me get back to my people, and for that, I'll be forever grateful. Ethan smiled, feeling the weight of their journey lift slightly. It's not over yet, but I'll be here to help however I can. You're not alone anymore. As the dust settled, and the Aravel Kingdom's forces began to regroup, Lyra looked up at the sky, her thoughts turning toward her future. It wouldn't be easy, and the road ahead would be long and full of challenges. But now she wasn't just a princess in hiding. She was a ruler with allies, with a purpose, and with the courage to face whatever came next. And as the sun began to set on the battlefield, Ethan knew that whatever happened, they had made it through together. A new era was beginning, one where Lyra would rise as the leader she was always meant to be.